if he feels that the people he has hired are competent enough, then he doesn't need to escort them to the grassroots as frequently as he's going, because his behavior right now is showing helicopter mom syndrome, where you're constantly hovering over to make sure that your child is doing...
Wait, come again. What's that syndrome called?
Helicopter mom. Whatever cloud he's on, I don't know what he drank, but he needs to stop drinking it. Yeah, because he is living in an illusion. These people need to realize that it's a generation that is used to being asked of their opinion. If you cannot handle criticism, I'm sorry to tell you that this is your life. You will constantly receive criticism as long as you're a public figure. And the government is going to have to deal with a population that's more observant. That's not going to take bull. That's not going to take bull.
I'm truly delighted to have your company on board on Richard Mwenja Exclusive this 30th day of January, the year of our Lord 2025. It's such a delight for me to have your company on board. And today we continue unpacking political conversations that are shaping Kenya's governance and political landscape. And I'm not alone. Today, I host a woman leader in this country. She is a youth leader of many fast. You know her. Executive Director of Siasa Place, Madam Nerima Wako. We're so elated to host you on Richard Mwenja Exclusive. Nerima, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You're well?
I'm, well, a bit of a homer. I was caught by rain, but I'm okay. Yeah.
So long. Where have you been, Nerima?
I've been busy, but behind the scenes, there's a lot that's been happening. So I would say busy, advocating, agonizing, and also organizing. So yeah, just not in front of the screen.
Yeah. It's a dream come true that you've graced our show today. We don't take it that for granted.
Okay.
And we look forward to your insights, especially on matters that are of public interest in this country. But we're at a time whereby it's a season for political coalitions, alignments and realignments in Kenya's political landscape. And a section of the Gen Z find that the confusion is too much. They don't know where to place their position. But let's first try to retrace our steps and understand the order of the problem we are in as a country. We do not have a clear direction of where Kenya should be. And let's go back to last year, that is 2024 June, the onset of Gen Z protest calling for better governance structures in this country. And would you then credit the president not really having the requisite capacity to listen to the cry of the Gen Z and implementing it thereafter to be what has brought us to where we are today? Or you feel that the president has done whatever best he could have done to address the issues of the Gen Z?
I believe that the president had an opportunity in terms of listening to what the demands were from the Gen Z. They appeared to be a moment where we thought he would listen, and that was right after cabinet was dissolved. But then as soon as we saw the appointments, we knew that he's heading toward the same trajectory. And I think he's surprised because the political elite have been used to mobilizing people based on maybe ethnicity, regions, and here comes this, group, a large number of young people who haven't galvanized around that, and they do not know how to manage, and that's why we started to hear that rhetoric of they are leaderless, how are we supposed to be able to negotiate with the leaderless, and I think that's where that confusion came in. So when you have people organizing in a way that they're used to, and then organizing in the space that they are not used to, is now where we're seeing this chaos and confusion. Yeah.
Glad that you've dropped the point about now we're saying politicians using the tribal card to spearhead their political agenda. And I'll still go back to my point. There's a section of Gen Z who are at a point of, at crossroads. They don't know whether to buy in this tribal card being splashed out, or they're going to be remain firm on their standing that it should be politics that is issue-based. For you as a youth leader in this country, Nerima, how then do we draw the line whereby a youth is not going to be enticed by the tribal card being used to polarize them against the other youth from a different community?
So where I see the change, people will reference the 2022 elections not being tribal, but we all know that as much as on the podium and in English they were speaking issues, there were still tribal politics that was happening behind, hapo nyuma ya tent. But where I see the difference is as much as we see you know, former DP Gachagua, talking about issues. He's talking about issues, but there's still connotations of tribalisms that's sneaking in. When we see the likes of, no, not mentioned, but you know the people I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure.
In public rallies, you know, talking about tribe. So I think they are still trying to, you know, drive us toward tribe, but they are fronting it as issue. And that's where I'm excited, because young people really, truly want fresh leadership. They want something different. They want to see change. They're tired of the stories, they're tired of the lies, they're tired of the promises. In fact, they're like, go and work. We want to see the outcomes, we want to see record, we want to see track record. And they're struggling with that because they're used to gallivanting the country and making promises. And even as recently when they went to Western and Mumias, and there was the promise of angalia kwa simu saizi umeshapata hiyo money
bonus,
kama
bonus,
kama uko KCB angalia. And people the next few days were like hakuna mtu amepata. We've gone around, we've asked. So that shows you accountability is huge. So they're not going to be able to bank on stories where people who, we fall in love with people who know how to tell stories and joke and be able to bring serious issues in a way that Kenyan people feel like I identify with what's going on. They are now a breed of young people specifically who are poking holes at that story. And so that's where I see that there's this swing kind of element that young people are questioning. So that's why they are not falling for the tribal card as soon as it has normally happened. And that's why you see quite a number of them on the fence and wondering, are these the only choices we have? And I feel like there's opportunity for new. There's opportunity for new. Yeah.
I get it. But isn't that unfortunate for us as a country that, say, in Nerima, 61 years later after independence, we're still placing so huge premium on the tribal card that, where Nerima was born, what is her clan? Don't you think it's so unfortunate that that even shouldn't be a talking point for us this far?
I think it's unfortunate, and I also don't think that people were ready for how the internet is going to change how people view politics. Because we're able to see people highlight accountability issues in the most rural of areas of Kenya. And people are beginning to see, or have now seen, that we're the same, if not worse than some. And I think that's also bringing up a different conversation. So even if I have my own, you know, within government, I am still struggling to get to my business or school or home because I do not have a road to get there. So what I see is they didn't fathom how technology would allow us to spread information so quickly in WhatsApp groups where people have access to these political leaders and the insults that they're receiving. It is almost a sense of, yani kuna mtoto ameniongelesha hivyo. So we have changed the dynamic of ageism, where young people are holding older people accountable, people who are old enough to be your grandfather, and telling them, you're not going the right way. We are also going against social cultural norms. And for me, those are the dynamics that we're not looking at, that we're slowly shifting and changing. And it takes time. So even though for 61 years, you know, even if we talk about our elections, and I don't even want to go into the Mlolongo, the 80s, the 90s, one-party state, Look at that. In that span of 60 years, countries have existed for 200, if you look at the US. And look at the US and I don't want to say what's going on, but whatever is happening there. 60 years, we've managed to change from not having the right to vote to having, you know, women's engagement in politics, to having a constitution that we developed and supported and created, to now having participation, demanding accountability, pushing for judiciary that's independent and institutions. If you look at it in that time frame, there's been a lot of change. And that's why young people are protecting that change. now to make sure we do not go back to the 90s or even worse.
But Nerima, you're talking about that now Kenyans are enjoying the privilege of holding the government to account and more so using technology and more particularly social media. But with the new sheriff in town, ICT CS Kabogo, who has already fired warning shots saying he has the power to regulate social media and even shut down if it comes to a point whereby it's threatening national security. Don't you think that is an attempt to silence the masses who are calling out for accountability? And will it work, that intimidation factor from the CS?
It's, what people don't realize is just how much we rely on the internet. So when you shut down social media, political leaders at this moment have more following than celebrities in this country. It also means that you don't have your personal channel to share your press releases on your handle. It also means you don't have connections with your own constituents, in your own community, in your WhatsApp group. So it will also have an impact on how you communicate and how you engage and how you work. And it also means that you're going to bite into the business sector. There are a lot of young people who have marketplaces on TikTok, on WhatsApp, on Instagram. So are you going to destabilize a digital economy because you're upset with what somebody said, because they use an AI image of you that you didn't like? So, we can make all sorts of statements about social media, but the negative of it, but we do not realize just how large the positive side of social media is being utilized for our own development. So I don't think it's something as simplified as he's making it. And it's so intertwined, ingrained, and integrated that it's going to be very difficult to separate. It feels like roadside declarations. You will make them one day and then 2 days later you find yourself rescinding them because of the impact that it's making. Yeah,
it makes sense, Nerima. Moving on swiftly with this conversation.
Welcome to Herencia, the heartland of good living, where you belong. A community with endless possibilities. Your path to discovering a master-planned gated community that matches your ambitions. Get yourself this must-have piece of paradise with state-of-the-art amenities, constant water supply, good security, tarmac roads, and much more. The best part, availability of buy and build financing services. Don't wait. Contact us today or visit our offices for more info. Buy and build your way at Herencia, the heartland of good living.
Nerima, you're Executive Director, Siasa Place, and you as the civil society have played a great role in calling out the mess and vice being spearheaded by the regime of the day, especially on critical issues to do with Kenya's agenda for the future. And a while back, barely 2 months, the church called out the president, and in there, or her accusations of this regime being one that is full of elevated falsehood, the consistent culture of lies, and the president really governing by invoking fear and thriving in that particular space. Today you are saying they visited Western Kenya, a promise for Ken bonuses was made, you followed up on it, it was never delivered. So do you still believe that the government hasn't done deliberate step to shun off that tag of being one that is full of the lying culture?
No, they have not done enough because, when you're doing well, you don't have to go and shout and tell people, look at my work, look at how good it looks. People will be able to see. I think government right now has taken a lot of its time to share how they are doing well rather than the Kenyan people being able to see and being able to realize that it's actually happening. And it's happening in several sectors. The other day we were talking about the education gridlock. We're seeing it with health, with SHA. And even now there's been, conversations about the military. And so when you begin to see major pillars of industries, of sectors, almost at a gridlock, the Kenyan people begin to worry. When you have the business community, even employees coming out and saying, our pay slips, there's just too much taxation, and we're hearing that the finance bill will tax even more. It's a concern. So I think what previous governments have done is they have managed to put individuals in places of power that are able to show the results. They're able to work. And what this administration is struggling with is people who are able to work and their work to speak for itself. We are seeing an administration that is so heavy on communication. The president himself, having his own Instagram, TikTok, updating us every hour. has given a lot of pressure to individuals who might not have the same capacity or even be willing to. So, you know, there's a friend of mine who was talking about agriculture, for instance, and how the previous CS was not as vocal, quite silent, and now replaced by Mutahi, and saying how he's an amazing individual, but it was very difficult to see the kind of works that he was doing because he's not as vocal. So you have an administration who, you know, if their leader is that present and visible, the expectation is that all of you, if you're not visible publicly, you're not working. Yet previous administration, it has not been that way. It has been, we have a president, we don't even know some of our PSs, CSs are more visible, but we're able to see ministries working without necessarily, I mean, come on, when you have
press statements and everything.
When you have somebody interrupting a press statement, first of all, you're coming to say Sha works. Then someone comes and interrupts, it is not working. It shows you that they are under pressure.
Now we are looking at prospects of hiring international PR firms to sanitize the face of the government.
No,
should we go that route?
We should not. We are wasting the resources. If Kenyans feel that you are working, they will be your PR consultant for free on social media.
But Nerima, there's a section in this country who believe that the civil society where you belong and other people out here are big on being career critics, making baseless critics, always out to dispirit the government. Do you think that's the real picture when Kenyans are calling out for accountability, that it's just the spirit of objecting everything the government is trying to do?
No, that's not the spirit, because we do work in counties. We release reports all the time. We also just are releasing one February 7th on Ajira centers. So we will do our homework, our studies, and share that, you know, when we look at Ajira centers across the country, these are working, these are not, these are some recommendations, these are some interviews we've had. And so with some county governments we've worked with extremely well. And there are people within the counties who are doing amazing work. So most of the backlash is with the national government.
I see.
Yes. But county governments, the individuals that we work with, that we know they do amazing work, and some listen to the critique. Even there was a time we even highlighted a dilapidated school in Kakamega. And Member of Parliament Salasia actually went, visited the school. He actually made sure resources went to the school and rebuilt the school. So there are some who do take the criticism positively, but there are others who do see it as noise. But this is a generation that uses technology. And the first thing you do when you get on social media, it asks you, what are you feeling? What's on your mind? Update your status. These people need to realize that it's a generation that is used to being asked of their opinion. If you cannot handle criticism, I'm sorry to tell you that this is your life. You will constantly receive criticism as long as you're a public figure. You are not going to be able to tell this generation to keep quiet when they have been used to speaking up. That's just the order of the day.
And do you think rendering Gen Z as digital wankers, because part of allies of the government have dismissed them as a passing cloud? They're just out here to misuse social media instead of using it for the right reason. Do you think that is something that will dispirit the Gen Zs and dampen their spirit in the fight for calling for accountability? No.
Actually, Richard, that statement, digital wankers, was the beginning of Reject Finance Bill, just because of the arrogance and, you know, just people showing that, oh, because we're on social media, nothing can happen. And how many things have we seen change because of the noise happening around social media? So I actually feel that it motivates. You know, there was even a point during the protest, the president kept asking, who is funding Gen Z? Who is? It was them. Like every time they would make statements and piss off people, it was them who was fueling, and they continue to fuel on their own. So it's not even the criticism from civil society. It's mainly the people within government who continue to act with arrogance and disregard of dignity of the people. They're the ones.
I'm glad, Niruma, that you've roped the conversation about the civil society and the Gen Z, why they were on the streets in the first place. But still, there is someone out here who is thinking that civil society and other people calling out for accountability are working at the behest of Western powers. Do you think that's something that quakes your heart as the civil society, the accusations?
No, it's tough. It's tough, especially online with some of the bullying that happens. And not all civil society is the same. There are some that we don't agree with, but that happens everywhere. Even you in your own house, you will disagree with your brother and your sister.
Even here, they talk of brown envelope in journalism.
It's everywhere. So it's about the people with character, integrity that exist, and they are individuals who are passionate and genuine and authentic. And I believe that in due time, you're able to sift through who are the authentic individuals or not. Your true characters always come out. But even those same people talking about, civil society and using Western resources or whatever, it's so interesting because we have, politicians within parliament who should be representing the people. You elected, you went and you voted for somebody. You didn't come and vote for me. You didn't come and tell me, now go in this civil society and do this work. That is a choice. But for politicians, they're the ones who said, I want to serve you and I want to do this work on your behalf. We don't hold them to the same regard as people in civil society. I would ask those people insulting, civil society activists and giving activists a very bad name. Why don't you use that same energy with politicians who have not done anything in your community? Because imagine you're the ones who owe them. It's your taxpayer money that is doing their work that they are not doing. But for us, not necessarily. So hold them at a higher regard than the pressure that you put in civil society. Yeah.
Before we shift gears and go to politics of the day full throttle and also talk about these politicians and how they have took a paradigm shift from their core role, which is representation, and hold into high regard the voice of the people, which is sovereign, let's close the page on what took the Gen Z to the streets and why they are still calling out the government of today. Do you think the president is trying to fix the moral issue which the Gen Z raised through a political solution? Because we're talking about accountability, corruption in this country, the condescending tone of the executive, and also the parliament of today being emasculated or looking like it's an extension of the executive. These were the real issues that were raised by the Gen Z. This far, do you render the solutions that have been presented by the president this far to be political? Look at the appointment of the broad-based government and also what has come thereafter. What's your take on that?
The broad-based appointments have made things even more confusing because what I'm seeing is a rebellion. I'm seeing a rebellion of young politicians within political parties speaking against their party leaders. So there is no unity. Even when you look at the way the appointments are being done, there's obviously a highlight of certain communities, which again is concerning. So when I talk about the rebellion, Edwin Sifuna, for instance, is speaking from a different page than what Raila is speaking, but they belong to the same party. And for me, I think it's healthy because you don't have to agree with everything that your political leader does and says. However, when we look at the way the politics is being structured, again, it's a boys' club and it's a certain age of elitists and type of people that are creating these opportunities for each other. And you're not seeing the nation or the people's interests at the front line. You're not. It's more about how we're going to capitalize on capturing power again. And I think it's going to be a lot more difficult than they realize because a lot of these young leaders, even when you talk about, Member of Parliament, Babu Owino, we talk about Salasia, let's talk about Mukunji, let's talk about Njerimaina Kirinyaga. They have constituents. They have followers as well. But you're dismissing them. You're dismissing them as your followers are not as important as Baba. But Baba's followers come from your followers. So somewhere along the line, they will need to find cohesion. I'm not sure how they are planning on having it, but I can tell you for free they are not thinking about it now. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some breakaway or an implosion of sorts because where two bulls fight, the grass must suffer. Someone will have to get out of the house. You
Someone
cannot
has to sit ground.
No. Yeah, you cannot have two kings in one house. You cannot. And that's where we're going to see. And for me, I think it's exciting to see, especially members who are below the age of 40. They have been more vocal in regards to Gen Zs and abductions later on, but they have been more vocal now. And you can see them wondering, what does it mean for my own political career? If I stay in politics, I do have to identify with the younger voters, and I cannot identify with the political elite the way they want me to. And so what happens when those two worlds merge?
It makes sense. Rightly put there, Nerima. And I want to understand something. You're talking about it has come to a time whereby the usual establishments are going to be faced off in 2027 because this far the ugly page has come to fore and people no longer want that system to continue. But now, in the architecture of the new political alliances that we are seeing, because we are seeing the realignments within our political parties and alliances, although it's yet to get solid. But then again, what should be, do you think these political parties have already factored in the place of Gen Zs in their formations, or Gen Zs are still an afterthought in these new alliances that we are seeing being in the offing?
Gen Zs are still an afterthought because they're struggling with understanding Gen Zs. And I think what is such an incredible and important piece that Gen Zs have is their loyalty. They are not loyal. And I love it. They're not loyal. Gen Zs are not loyal. And because they are not loyal, it's very difficult to predict them. You know, it's easier to be like, if we put someone who comes from our tribe, we will get the loyalty. You can't say the same for Gen Z. Something that happens even within a day or two before voting can impact the way that generation is going to vote, especially the younger Gen Z, 18 to 22. And so for me, I think that's a powerful card. It creates room for a swing. And even if it's a swing, it's a population that feels that they have some sense of control. Even with some of the engagements that we have, there's a lot of back and forth happening in people's homes between parents and Gen Z. It's not like in the beginning, parents were saying, yes, 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 go. And when things began to get difficult and there were goons out there, there were parents saying, don't go, don't go. Even the ones who are showing up, they were fighting with their parents to show up, majority of them. And so I think we're going to have intergenerational fights within the family household when it comes to opinion of who people should vote for. And I feel that this generation has become more vocal in terms of not agreeing with their parents' choices, because they'll be able to say, why should I follow in the footsteps you're telling me, and I can see that it's not leading me toward the path that I would like to lead. Because you're talking about parents who have been in the same job for 30 years. Loyalty. Gen Z, you, mlipe vibaya. Mlipe vibaya. Let's see if they live and last 6 months. Treat them bad. If they find another opportunity, they are gone. If they can leave this country, they are gone. If they can get a passport, they are gone. Loyalty wapi. And I think for me, that's a powerful generation where it's like you think you have them, but not quite. I think that's going to be an interesting equation to dissect.
But Nerima, let's circle back to last year, June. At the onset of the Gen Z protest, the Gen Z were a united force. And clearly, you could tell that their main vision was to oust the government of the day and bring in an administration that will heed to the call of Kenyans and herald new beginnings for Kenya. But thereafter, we saw a section of the Gen Z join mainstream political parties. Some went ahead to endorse themselves for the presidential race in 2027 and other elective posts that will come once the material day comes in 2027. Are you a disappointed person looking at, we were once a united front, but now everyone is harboring their own interest?
No, I'm not disappointed. I think that happens in movements. And the Gen Z, it wasn't to oust the government. It was to get rid of the finance bill, and it was for accountability. Simple. Which, I mean, not really gotten rid of. We're still seeing inklings of the finance bill being reinserted, and we're not seeing anybody being held accountable. People died, and still no one is even going through any court case at the moment, and families have not been compensated. We have no answers. So we're still in the same place that we were 6-7 months ago. And I think that Gen Z are still disgruntled. So if those, individuals we're talking about were the true leaders, it would have quieted down. But it hasn't. Just because we're not seeing people outside mobilizing, why would they? Because it was very difficult to begin to get out when you feel unsafe, when you're seeing goons being sent by politicians to go and disrupt, when you're seeing individuals taking advantage of that situation. Tactics must change. What I see is a change in tactic where people are still mobilizing. When you're seeing people writing emails, when you're seeing people voting for the most corrupt leader in the world, people are still mobilizing. It's just not the way our parents are used to mobilizing. So I do believe that there will be another opportunity for people to come together again. But now we have seen people, we understand characters, and there will be more faces that will come to the fore. And that's how movements are built. I think that there are still people who organized with Gen Z that were not based in Nairobi, based in different counties. They are leaders in the communities, and they are still leaders today. They are still doing accountability work as we speak. They are just not as visible online. And I think those people are very powerful. I think that, you know, individuals have recognized them, seen them, and they are being encouraged to enter leadership. So we're going to see a lot more younger people standing up for elective seats. And that is a movement in itself, just not guised under one umbrella. And as these individuals continue to rise up, they will join parties, they will form alliances, and people will be able to have a home to go to. So it's a slow process, but I think the process is still ongoing.
I get it. Nerima, I mean, you'll bear witness to this, that many years now, money has always been used, especially during the electioneering period, to divert, of course, the attention of the masses, or at least divert people from some certain issues. Do you think the place of money can be, the place of money in Kenyan politics can be dished out in 2027 to make now the Gen Z make irrational decisions at the 11th hour? Do you think that's something that can be used to tame down the rationality of the Gen Z when it comes to voting?
Actually, for me, I feel like 2027 is so far, and I'll tell you why. Because even when we talk about the selection panel, it's going to be interesting to see the kind of commissioners that will be selected. Yes, because, I mean, we already know that interests are involved. And if they go the way I'm assuming they'll go, it's just to not have young people in mind and just have the same old
Old guards.
Old guards and alliances. If they go the way I assume they will go. And I truly believe that conversations around voter registration with IDs will begin. That will create a whole other momentum and questions about registration. And secondly, that will bring a lot of tension. And I truly believe there's going to be a lot of questions about IEBC itself. We're going to have a lot more watchdogs. Remember in 2022, you know, IEBC permitted people to take pictures and have their cell phones within polling stations. That, in this election, will change the way people organize watching the vote. So you're going to have people who are more observant and more keen. The same way bills are passing and Kenyans are hearing, seeing, and organizing. You know, these days people question what's being debated in parliament. That was not the same 3 years ago. So for me, I say 2027 is far because there are going to be a lot more issues that will prop up, and the government is going to have to deal with a population that's more observant. That's not going to take bull. That's not going to take bull. And so what's going to end up happening? If this administration thinks they can win an election without having the majority, I mean...
Kapsirep Member of Parliament Oscar Sudi believes they're going to win by manipulating the votes in favor of President Ruto, citing that there's never been a precedence in Kenya of a one-term president, and they'll go to whatever level to manipulate the votes in his favor. Don't you think that's feeding into voter apathy in Kenya?
Whatever cloud he's on, I don't know what he drank, but he needs to stop drinking it. Yeah, because he is living in an illusion. Because even when we talk about the broad-based government, what they are doing is actually trying to buy their relevance and trying to buy their positioning. If they were so secure that the majority of Kenyan people voted them in, they would not need to incorporate all these other individuals and basically pulled from other parties, which were opposition. So you would think that if a government had a manifesto, the manifesto of opposition and government should not be able to match.
True.
But if it's so easy for people to seamlessly join your government and its manifesto, you're one in the same. So what you're buying is the people. What you're buying is confidence. We have a government with no confidence.
Really?
No confidence.
Self-esteem
no
issues.
Confidence. No public confidence. And it's amazing that they believe that they can build this confidence in 2 years and not paying attention to just what the Kenyan people genuinely feel. It's amazing.
So to eradicate such issues from arising in the near future, do you suggest that probably the official opposition should be going into a post-election charter with the government so that each plays their role without really moving into the other outfit for their own interest?
I've already had rumors that they're coming up with some cooperation agreement.
Really?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see, because let me tell you, what is the point of having an agreement if you don't even listen to the law? So you're just going to go against the agreement. Even before they sign that agreement, let me tell them, they are not going to follow that agreement. So why are we wasting time signing an agreement? People signed agreements, isn't it? See, DP Gachagua is out.
Yeah, sure.
So he signed something. The
women charter,
see what he signed, at youth. See what he signed, now what's happening? So for me, unfortunately, if we had government that followed the rule of law, I would be happy to talk about agreements. But because we have seen even court orders being dismissed, then agreements are just pieces of paper that we can throw into this fire and it will just make us warmer. Yeah.
I get it, Nerima. And I want to understand something. You've gone on record in media outlets out here calling out the return of political sycophants in Kenya. And you've really taken concern with even young legislators who seem to be part of the present worship orchestra of this administration, literally being blinded by the allure of power and the niceties that come with holding certain positions. Are you still disappointed that we are seeing the return of political sycophants, people as young as those constituting the Gen Z movement in Kenya?
Absolutely, I am. And it's blind sycophancy, and it's concerning because, you know, we are going to continue getting younger. Our our population continues to increase. And what worries me is just the high levels of unemployment. So every year when I see the number of students doing KCSE, and then those who are brilliant, you know, many are passing. And imagine what it does to a young person's self-esteem when they cannot continue with their education and there's no employment. You are basically channeling them to a country that doesn't love them. And what often happens is they just need the right person, the wrong person, at the right time to basically persuade them that these systems don't have to exist. Let me get rid of them and basically connect with the relative status quo. So relative status quo is someone who can tap into what you're feeling when you're feeling neglected, when you're feeling ignored, when you're feeling desperate, when you're feeling hopeless. You just need someone who can talk very well to that feeling and tell you, know what, I'm the solution. We can fix that. And it can be a terrible person, and they're able to enter power, and you don't know how they are going to manage that power. That's my concern. So when we follow that kind of sycophancy and the mismanagement of public resource, we continue to minimize opportunities for young people. We cannot survive like that anymore. More and more, you're seeing, you know, adults depending on their parents who should be retired. And it should be the other way around. You should be able to take care of your parents. And you think that education is the key to success, but you're learning and seeing that education has nothing to do with the success that is visible. So I think that if we are not careful, especially if we continue to have leaders who do not care for the population, we will have to get to a brink of collapse. Something has got to give, and I'm hoping that we don't get to that point.
Sure, certainly. And it makes sense, Nerima. Much as comparison is a thief of joy, when I mention, say, Member of Parliament George Kaluma, Opio Andai, Kimani Ichung'wah, and on the other hand, Aiwei Gathoni Wamshomba, people like Senator Karungo Athang'wa, what comes to your mind, Nerima?
Sometimes, honestly, if I see a news report and their name pops up, I'm not that interested to read.
Why though? Why though?
Because there have been some moments, not all the time, but just some moments where you can wonder about reasoning behind certain statements, because you know that that individual was just following an order to support. You can clearly see and you can tell. So I wonder about our backbones. I wonder whether they fully understand the kind of crisis, not just our country, the globe is in, and the self-reliance our economies have to depend on and grow. I don't think they're feeling that pressure. I don't think they're feeling that pressure. Or maybe they are, but they're not showing it. They're really good at hiding it. So for me, what comes to mind is a wake-up call. Like, I hope that they eventually wake up and just come to the truth.
So this far they are sleeping through a revolution. That's what you would say?
Yeah, I would say that. By the way, I would.
You seem to be implying that those are the sycophants you were talking about a little back.
A little. Yeah, some of them, not all of them. And you know, sometimes you can see news reports and you wonder if it's real. You've done that. You know, when you check if it came from a mainstream media or someone just went and created a fake poster to say that someone said this. And I do know, like with my personal relationships with some members of parliament, it's tough. It's tough to go against, say, for instance, what the president believes. And people who have taken that stance, you know, when you see Gachagua talking about he was removed from WhatsApp groups, he was not the only one. Kuna wengi, they're just not out here saying, pia mimi nimetolewa. But there are many. And so when you're treated as though, you know, when you disagree, go and sit in the corner like a bad child and reflect on your decisions. That's where we are at, where there can't be constructive criticism. And I think constructive criticism is what grows a nation. We cannot all agree all the time, but it's leadership where you're able to combine those who criticize and those who agree and come with a compromise. That's leadership. And that's how you have bipartisan leadership, not just one-way groupthink. We have a problem if everyone thinks the same as a group.
Nerima, you seem to be implying that the president seems to be an advisor to his advisors and that he's not even granting his members of parliament and other state officers the free hand to apply themselves. Do you think that is the biggest unfortunate occurrence on the side of the president?
You know, I don't know, Richard. How many advisors does the president have? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Because
quite robust.
Yes. So by the time you have that many advisors, there are two things here. Well, you're not listening.
Really?
You're not. No. You can't have that many advisors. Like, first of all, even if you'd listen to them, who would you listen to? Like, if you, one person, they're to advise you and you agree and talk to them. Now, if you had 15, at what point are you listening if it's constant chatter all the time? So my only conclusion is that you're not listening to anybody because you can't listen to everybody. So you're not listening to anybody. Because you can't listen to everybody. When there are too many people in the kitchen, you will not be able to cook anything. You can't cook anything. Unless you choose, I'm not going to listen to anybody. Mimi nitapika tu peke yangu. And I think that's what's happening.
It makes sense. Almost finally, Nerima. A while ago, a few days back, Rigathi Gachagua has revealed that State House Kenya is the center of corruption. On the other hand, the president accuses former DP Gachagua as the most incompetent and corrupt leader in this country. I want to understand something. You've talked about this being the usual establishments in Kenya's political arena. So, are you suggesting that they're just cut from the same cloth, that neither Gachagua is right or William Ruto is right about the other, especially on the fight against corruption in this country?
I don't think anybody is clean. There are some who are dirtier than others, but I don't think anyone is clean.
There's no saint therein?
No, there's no saint therein. And if we think that there is, it's a lie. But me, I'm here for that tea. I want to know the details. So they just continue to banter back and forth. Let's know who in State House, in which offices. I think that we're well aware that it's been recorded even in Auditor General reports. There's been loss of resources. There's been a lot of corruption. But we haven't had, convictions and verdicts. But I think even for the own Kenyan people, it's good for us to have that information in the public. And if it takes a fight to do that, then continue fighting.
So Nerima is welcoming more dossier from Rigathi Gachagua, the truthful man of God.
Yeah, and he's hilarious. He should just continue to deliver and inject. As we're here for it.
I get it. So when the president goes on a public rally and talks about his government expediting the war on graft, this far, are you going to conclude that as a pretentious call from the president?
Yes, because by now heads would have rolled. I think there are a number of cases that even when he entered after 2022, I think I believe 8 corruption cases were thrown out the window. So I am yet to see any conviction of any case. I think, like I said, earlier, when it comes to speaking about things, then we are more concerned about the action. We would like to see the results. We don't need you to tell us over and over that you're fighting corruption. We would like to see it. And so far, we have seen nothing. I mean, even Kibaki tried to fire some of his friends. But this guy, he has been loyal to his friends. He's kept them. He's kept them within his circle. And we have not seen any heads roll in regards to corruption. If we saw some heads roll, maybe he would be a little bit more believable.
Very finally, Nerima, we are seeing now coalitions are in the making. And let's talk about the official opposition in this country. Part of it has gone to bed with the government of the day. But now, on the contrary, there are those consider themselves the people's loyal opposition. So a Gen Z is standing here today at Crossroads wondering, should I go the Wiper leader way, Kalonzo's way, the DAP way, led by Eugene Wamalwa? Should I go the Matiang'i Kioni way, which is being spearheaded by the Jubilee Party? Which way should I go? What's your word for that Gen Z who is now at the center of confusion, not knowing which opposition formation to belong to?
I love that you said the official opposition, because me, I've been seeing LSK playing a more opposition role than any of these political leaders or political parties.
Faith Odhiambo is now the representative of the masses.
She has stood her ground more than a lot of these men combined. But I will say that it's too early. Honestly, politics changes so quickly. A day can be 10 years in politics. Yeah, I would just tell them to watch. Just watch and just pay attention, because the answer will become clearer with time. Because even themselves, they're just over here fronting presidential candidates. All parties are looking for a presidential candidate and fronting people. Also, they are not sure. So even toward the end, they're going to be able to form their coalition. Just watch them and decide in the end. I do believe there's still room for other candidates. Like I mentioned, we still have 2 years to go, and other candidates will come. And when we know the game, then in finality, we can now start making those choices and decipher. Right now, it's too early. We're still in the noise. Yeah, the dust needs to settle. Yeah.
There's a Kenyan who is wondering, you've really talked about the president probably not making deliberate actions towards addressing that which the public wants to see and solidly feel. And they want to understand, are we at a point whereby our president is at a point of zero redemption? Should we now turn to divide intervention? Or what now should the president tap into just so to make the changes before end of his first tenure in office?
I struggle to understand the changes, because we're still not seeing the impact that it's happening on the ground. So for me, I would say that his rating is low at the moment, and for him to get public's confidence, Kenyans would like to see things working. When I have a friend who his wife just gave birth and he's paying 14,000 to SHA, and SHA only contributed 9,000 shillings, and anyone with a child knows that doesn't even cover a fraction of normal delivery. These are the true issues that Kenyans are going through and experiences. Answering those questions is what people want. And unfortunately, at the moment, those questions are not being answered. So where the president is at the moment, he's focused on traversing the country and campaigning rather than making sure his institutions and systems work. He should be indoors, speaking with his cabinets and wondering why systems and institutions are not working, and channeling enough energy into that. Kenyans want to see results.
The president believes that he's out there for development tours and not early premature campaigns. Why are you convinced that they are premature campaigns?
Because he has launched a number of things that he shouldn't be launching. What are the cabinet secretaries for? I mean, there are people that you appoint to do that work. You represent our country. You can go represent the country as a symbol of unity. I mean, he was trying with DRC with this conversation. That meeting didn't happen well. He should figure out why it didn't happen well. I think he has a lot on his docket when it comes to foreign relations, and also when it comes to the country's expectations. If he feels that the people he has hired are competent enough, then he doesn't need to escort them to the grassroots as frequently as he's going, because his behavior right now is showing helicopter mom syndrome, where you're constantly hovering over to make sure that your child is doing...
Wait, come again. What's that syndrome called?
Helicopter mom. You know, helicopter mom is like mothers who they don't feel like their child is safe anywhere. So even then you drop them at school, uko hapo kwa dirisha unaangalia anafanya aje. Mwalimu ako na yeye, ako sawa. That's what it looks like, where you can't trust in the capacities of your own child or your own appointments, and you do not trust in the capacities of the teacher, of the institution to be able to function. So you must go and double check for yourself because your eyes will tell you the true situation. Yani, an update cannot do. An advisor giving you an update, no. Let me see for myself.
The president might be believing that he's a jack of many trades and a master of them all.
Oh, my goodness, that is a problem because a lot of jack of all trades end up wasting a lot of time and too much play. It's too much play. I believe in being focused and digging deep rather than being all over the place and shallow, because you can find yourself being busy doing nothing. Yeah.
Finally, for that African child, for that Kenyan child, looking at the future, the new funding model is still receiving negative blows here and there. Healthcare systems still receiving a beating. Looking at the cost of living still quite high. And they are wondering, will I make it to that future which I've always harbored in my mind? What's your word for them?
Wow. You know, when you were asking that question, I was wondering, is there something good? Like, is this something good? You've talked a lot of sectors and confusion and chaos. And I'll say one thing. For them, it's, you know, we must learn from this time. I feel sometimes Kenyans have short-term memory. We cannot afford a short-term memory. The engagement must continue and observing must continue and electing the right leaders. And this is what happens. Like, if you elect clowns, then expect a circus. Yeah. So we cannot expect to have representatives that we can clearly see their behavior and expect them to change miraculously. I think we just need to come to our true selves and look in the mirror and decide for ourselves. Now that I've seen, you know, we see character development with partners.
Of course.
Yeah.
Half the time.
Half the time. So that one who was bad, you're just like, wait. I have learned this is the character development for Kenya. Kenyans, do not go back to the bad ex. Just learn. It gets worse.
Well, there you have it from Executive Director of Siasa Place, Madam Nerima Wako. Of course, calling out on Kenyans to be more sensitive next time they're going to the ballot, or even when they're electing their leaders, saying that if you elect clowns, certainly you need to expect a circus. And that the president is suffering from helicopter mom syndrome. That one is a very interesting one. If you haven't caught up on that, please watch the show from the beginning to the end. Thank you so much, Nerima Wako, for slating time for this particular program.
Thank you.
We really appreciate that your insights are going to help build much of civic education, which we do out here. And we're really honored by your presence and insights.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it.
Always a humble card on the table from you every other time. But you've achieved so many things. How do you stay grounded despite all the accolades to your name?
Wow. My faith, yes. So I'm a true believer of Christ.
Oh.
Yeah.
Truthful child of God.
I am a truthful. Say truthful because there are people who have used that. But no, yes, I have a relationship with my Creator. So I do believe I'm here for a purpose and I serve my Creator. Yeah.
Kipruto Arap Kirwa implored me to ask you to grace our next 5 editions that you hold fort for him.
Wow, you had to do this
And
on air.
I had to, because he believes that the only person who can fit his shoes and even take it a notch high is Nerima Wako.
Oh, wow.
No one else.
Wow.
I guess you'll give me an answer after this particular show, but Madam Nerima Wako will still be on the show, probably in the near future. We wait to see as to whether the president and his team will change for the better. It remains to be seen. Thank you so much for tuning in to Richard Mwenja Exclusive. Always a pleasure to have you on board. Get this conversation going beyond here. I'm at Mwenja Richard on X and across every other social media platform. Nerima Wako, where can they get you?
At Nerima W.
At
Everywhere.
Nerima W.
Yeah, or at Siasa Place. Yeah.
And for those who would wish to join Siasa Place, or at least to know about the organization?
Oh, yeah, sure. Even on our Facebook, it's still Siasa Place, and on our website, siasaplace.com. There's a link to subscribe, and you'll be able to get text messages and even join us in events, and you're welcome. Welcome to come.
All right. Asanteni sana for tuning in. Until we get to do this again sometime next week, do enjoy the rest of your viewing.